Maxime Lagrave will be playing against Magnus Carlsen, who is also ready to go. Are we expecting a King's Pawn opening, a Sicilian in this one?
I don't think it was a yawn, Tanya. I think it was a roar. I think he's woken up and he's ready to play. A Sicilian is very likely. That's Maxime's bread and butter. We've seen him kind of semi-blunder in the opening, but understand positions so well in those dynamic kind of messes that he navigates it to perform.
On to Magnus Carlsen, who just lost his round 5 in a deadly Armageddon to Wesley So. He's playing against Maxime Lagrave, who took down Alireza Firouzja. And Maxime has managed to get a knight on d4, which means that we can expect a lot of trades in the center. Who would that favor in this position?
Well, it's essential that black clogs that d4 square, because you see there's one pawn on c4. If white could actually push that pawn where that knight is, you have such good central control that black would not be a happy camper. So you're clogging that lane. You're making sure that that pawn push isn't available. And as Tanya was indicating, there might be a trade on that d4 square, but I like what Magnus is doing. Trade on your own terms. Knight takes knight on f3 will not be very scary. You can simply take back. You have this bishop that is staring down into the black camp, and eventually you will be able to challenge for that d4 square. So I like the start of this game for Magnus. I would prefer to have the white side of this position, but Maxime, he's been rock solid in the center.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is that Maxime was the first to surprise Magnus. If we go back just very briefly to the start, Maxime always, or nearly always, fearing Kertz his bishop. He normally tries to play the Grunwald defense, bring in knight out, pawn out, bishop to g7. Here, we transpose to a very slow type of position, which normally would favor Magnus Carlsen. So interesting that Maxime, maybe fearing opening preparation, switches things up, but catching up with the current position. I agree with everything Robert mentioned there. With black, you have to be really careful. This diagonal is just so strong. This white light squared bishop, if it ever opens up, will become the most valuable piece. So accuracy is needed at this early stage. And I've actually looked at this position before myself a long, long time ago. And I do remember that you can take this knight and try to plug the square with the bishop instead. Multiple approaches, of course, but Maxime needs to be careful. Things could spiral quickly for black. Not in a positive way if he slips up just once or twice, as Magnus makes a bit of a face there on the camera.
Really nicely explained there. It is all about stopping that. To allow any of that, and instead goes for a flank break with b5, and we will keep an eye on that one and jump back as black has made his decision. And meanwhile, there are decisions to be made in this one. Magnus Carlsen, he's decided to fall back with the knight, so not allowing any trades. And there is a big threat on the board. Those two knights are eyeing a jump on the f6. Look at the eval bar. Is Maxime about to get checkmated?
I was going to say, I think there's really one decision here, and it's when will black resign? Because look at this position. A knight is about to land on f6. There's nothing black can do about it. And it's not even just a piece sacrifice that's unclear. You could even take back with a pawn instead of going for checkmate and win that bishop on c5. So there is nothing wrong with white's position. It's a clean attack. That black king, it's devastated, it's hunted, and it's going to tip over.
It feels like Magnus has been inspired by Wesley So, checkmating him almost in the last game, going for this kind of flash attack. Just he's gone straight for this black king now. And for example, I mean, there's no obvious moves here for black. If you just move a pawn, okay, he plays bishop to a3 instead. But same idea. I think you just land in a knight right now. Maybe this concept you mentioned, Robert, check. If the black king moves, you can just take this pawn, come in with your queen. This is going to be disastrous. If you take the knight, you pretty much have to take the knight. Then I think multiple ways to win this. The one you mentioned, taking with the pawn, attacking the black queen, forcing the black queen to stay on this diagonal to protect her bishop. But now the white knight can just come in, threatening checkmate. I mean, this is just fatal. Pawn to h6. Now you deflect the black queen. And once she moves, checkmate incoming. On g7, h7, everything. It's over.
Magnus has this incredible ability to just come back from a devastating game with little turnaround time. We've seen him make these comeback wins with his back against the wall. He lost to Wesley So in a game that just felt so one-sided. Then comes back, plays Maxime Lagrave. And what is this? Move number 18, completely winning. Knight f6 is a killer threat on the board. Maxime in big trouble. Has he made the move bishop a3?
He did.
Wow. Magnus Carlsen, if he goes knight f6, it's game over, and he's going to do it.
Yeah, he for sure will do it. But I think what David said earlier is true, that sometimes when you lose a game when you're not playing your best, that's when you're shaken, your confidence is no longer there. But when your opponent just crushes you like that, I think Magnus just respects Wesley. I really believe that's what happened. So he's not actually that deflated. He's like, well done, Wesley So. He's impressed, and he's also impressing us in this game because this is a miniature, it's over.
Yeah, I loved Magnus's interview with Danny yesterday where he was like, we're not done. Let's talk about those predictions. You only motivated me, if anything. And I think that loss to Wesley in the previous game, the first kind of blemish on his scoreboard in this tournament, I think it's really woken Magnus up, even pushed him to higher levels. And checkmate incoming, queen to b4. This won't change anything at all. White's queen, that pawn on f6 counts as an attacker, and the white knight joining in very shortly. Maxime's just playing on, praying for a miracle. But Magnus, after a bit of calculation, will land that killer blow.
And just to understand, how do you finish it? So the knight comes in, you're threatening a mate on h7. The only way that Maxime has is to run. Magnus is showing us the way. I think we can just sit back and enjoy the beauty of Magnus Carlsen's chess.
He's not even material down. And we see a handshake. Maxime resigns. Miniature, you called it, Robert. Brutal victory from Magnus Carlsen.
Just what he needed after his loss against